Well, here we are again. Another edition of Mike's Garage in the not so clean basement. So, got back from the trip to Pennsylvania over the weekend, and now it's snowing here, and it's too cold to do anything outside. So, we got the transmission, the JDM transmission that we're gonna put in the Legacy in the rally car project. And long story short, I gotta switch the cases of the transmission. This is a pull type clutch, and the whole setup we're gonna use is using a push type. So this case won't work with that setup. I have to change the case. So now is a good time to show everybody. If you ever need to take apart, if something goes wrong inside your 5-speed Subaru tranny, you don't need to take it to a specialist or anything. You can do it yourself. It's pretty simple. You need just basic, getting the tranny out is the hardest part. You need some basic hand tools, a hammer, a punch, a screwdriver, and if memory serves me correct, you only need a 14 and a 12 millimeter socket and a wrench. You might actually need 2 sockets because a couple of them are pretty deep in the sides of the tranny. But it's very simple. You need to take it apart if you're changing the gear set or something went wrong in your tranny. You can take it apart. So what we're going to do is the breakdown right now as quick as possible. Once you got it at this point, obviously drain the fluid. That's the mistake I made. This one had actually Japanese fluid still in it. It's going to cost me a couple horsepower now, putting American fluid in here. But yeah, it took at least 1.5 quarts out of this thing. I figured it was drained, but I guess not. And pretty much first couple steps don't have to be right in line, but the main thing is you want to get the transfer case off first. So you get the tranny mount off. And another thing worth noting is the tranny won't sit with the bell housing flat on the ground. So most of the time I got it on a 14-inch steel rim right now, but most of the time I just put two 2x4s or two 4x4s underneath it to hold it up. But this is all I could come across at the moment was a rim. Don't have any wood down here. Now, what you need the hammer and the punch for, which I don't have a punch right now, is you got to knock the shift shaft. You have to take this yoke off of here. Let me go get a punch. Just drive this sucker out of here. Careful you don't lose the pin. That's going to go flying. That should just tap off. You don't want to really ruin the shaft. Remember that this is the tab for the little spring to return your shifter to the center. That goes opposite, closer to the tail shaft, opposite this washer here that it hooks to. Now that you got that off, you want to start going for make sure all your electrical connections are disassembled, but now you can go for actually unbolting the transfer case from the back of the tranny. And this gun's a little weak. Those systems probably never been apart. Pop them all loose a little bit first. And Some of these you're going to want to get yourself a nice little extension because they're a little captured by the transmission housing itself. Well, my little car rim stand is not working out as well as I thought. It's working though. You don't want to take this back cover off. It's not necessary. You just have to get all these ones that are holding the transfer case to the gearbox itself. Just go around the edge here. We've got two in the back that are got the housing itself in the kind of in the way, so those are going to have to be done by a wrench. Go get myself, or what the hell did I do with it? This one I had a second ago, 14mm wrench. Huh. Amazing. There we go. Right where my gloves were. I left my gloves too. Could have used those before I got all dirty. I don't know if this stubby 14 is going to get them loose. Oh, I did it. Easy peasy. I might actually have a 14mm universal, do I? That would be awesome. Nope. Womp womp womp. Oh well. That would have been really cool, but guess not. Nope. Oh well. But now that those are all out, cracked loose, you can just zip them out with the gun. Rusty, it's not a big deal. Over here. Still one on a funny angle. And got him out. Alright. Now that those are all out, you gotta watch sometimes these alignment pins. There's one on the top here and one on the bottom on the other side. They sometimes get a little rust around them, a little too much for the case to come off in. You get a little, you get a little piece of sandpaper and go around it. Usually that helps. I'm gonna get some spray, spray it in there. A little bit of lube never hurt anybody. A couple taps. It's just got a paper gasket in here usually. I don't think it's glued from the factory. At least I've never seen one that way. I like to just give it a knock on the transmission mount because that's pretty much the most rigid part that you can hit it on here. You know, you don't want to go smashing a screwdriver in between here. That'll ruin the mating surface and it'll leak all over the place. And there we go. It's starting to rip the paper. You can see a little bit of a gap opening up. Keep working it back and forth from side to side. There we go. There, alright. Now we're going to pull the transfer case out. As you do, this shift shaft is going to go down in there. And once you get it out to a certain point, you should be able to move the shaft and pop it out of its little guide there. And that's that. There's your transfer case. That's all one unit. Shift shaft can stay in there with that. This unit's all self-contained. That can just stay there. The way you would break that apart is take the end cap or the end housing off and everything comes out the back. It's all retained in the front. You can't lose any pieces out this way. But this one is, we don't need to do anything in there. Maybe another time I'll do a video on that part. Now, what you got to remember in the back is that it splits, this transmission splits open like a clamshell. So, you have to take out, let me put it on an angle here. You have to take out, you got this rear bearing retainer, you have to take out these two bolts on this side first. I like to leave the other two in because it allows it to keep, it actually holds the shaft positively into the opposite side. Now this retaining ring, you can take this retaining ring off of the fifth gear. Just set that aside. Don't forget where it came from. That's just like a thrust washer for the input shaft. I'm going to take those two bolts off of this side. And that's the, now we're starting to use the 12 mil. So if you don't take them off, you're going to find yourself hammering on this tranny, trying to split the two halves and wondering why the hell it won't come apart. Also, conveniently, this paper gasket happened to rip and keep where the joints are apart, so when I have that, sometimes that makes it a little harder to get apart as well. I don't know if the tail of the bike is interfering with the corner of the shot. Maybe that'll help a little bit more. Try and get this a little better in view. Now all you got to do is blast out every bolt. Don't take these out. These are the stops for the shift shafts. That's what the detents that keeps these shafts basically in gear or in neutral. You don't want to take them out. Those can stay right where they are. And this bolt here doesn't have to come out either. That is the retainer for the adjustment on the front carrier bearings. That doesn't need to, just trying to get a better angle here. That doesn't need this. These three, obviously, well, they're a 10, so you're not using that size anyway, but this 14 millimeter down here doesn't need to come out either, because that is the retainer for this phone dial here. But every other bolt on the sides needs to come out. Just start with 14s, do every 14, and then do the 12s. There is no real order. I'm just doing it that way so I don't have to keep switching sockets. Well, the gun's not strong enough either. Oh boy. There's my genius transmission stand. Not working out as good as it. The wood would have been better. I just didn't have any around. Crack as many of these loose as I can. While I'm here, I got this side socket on the ratchet. That's all the 14s. Yeah, got that one, got that one. There's the one up here, which they put the nut on the other side because of the dipstick tube. Oh, come on, you. And this guy up here. Oh boy, really got to rethink this work stand deal. Well, we'll see if I can get them away with all of them with getting the wrench on them. Now, you don't need really to worry too much about what bolt came out of where, as far as the long ones, how long they are. You notice a couple of them are different lengths. When you go to put them back together, all you got to do is shove it through the housing, and if you see about a ½ inch of thread coming out on the other side, that's the right length bolt. If there's more than that, odds are it's probably not right. And if you can barely get the threads through, then it's not right either. Just keep trying it until you get the right one. There's only probably like 3 or 4 different sizes. And most of them will only fit in their home. So you don't really have to worry too much about confusing them or mixing them up. This last one up here. This guy can come off. And take the slave cylinder off. Now that my shirt's covered in gear oil, it's out. I mean, normally you could pull the pin also for the clutch fork, but splitting it really won't interfere when you're splitting it apart. It's just personal preference whether or not you want to get it out. Now on to the 12s. There's a lot more 12 mils than there are 14. There we go with the keep track of all your little magic washers. Japanese man put on there for some reason. Same thing with these bolts. If you're, you don't really have to worry about where they're coming out of and them going back, because it's either fits or it doesn't fit. Boy, that one's tight. Hey now, how the hell did that happen? Rusty, that's why. It's JDM rust. People pay extra for that. Japanese is trash. It's our treasure. Alright, now that's just maybe one more, I think. Right there by the dipstick. This is the hardest one to get to. As a matter of fact, I can't even get to it with the gun. With the ratchet. And the wrench over here. It's hidden by the dipstick tube. And you'll know, like those two bolts, the 114 and the 112, they go in backwards. You'll know which ones those are because you can't put them in the other way because they hit the dipstick tube. Was that all of them? Let's see. Yep. That's all of them. Now, on these transmissions, you got this tab here, this other little piece here, this little part jutting out, and you got one down, there's two down on there's two on the top, and you got one here, and also one down here in the front. I mean, don't kill them, but that's so you're not hammering a screwdriver in between here. You don't ever want to do that. Basically what you're doing here is knocking this cover off. So this side of the tranny, all you want to do is crack it loose. This is where you're hitting. They give you these little, they were thinking ahead, these Japs. They give you these little areas to hit. I mean, if you round them off a little bit with the hammer, it's not a big deal. Wow, this really sucks. Yeah, don't use a car rim. Just use the pieces of wood like I should have. Thought I'd try something different and it didn't work. So you want to give those a couple decent whacks while kind of holding on to the opposite side. You know, solid hits, but nothing major. And you can see it right away opening up. You can hear it get like a hollow sound because you're breaking the seal. And there we go. She's popping. She's popping apart. Okay, now, like I said before, the side with the shift shafts here and the detents, that's where the gears are going to stay in. So you want to lay that part down. So basically, let me move this transfer case. Put that down over there. I'm going to try and get a nice angle to show you what's going on here. So I'm going to pick this whole thing up and lay it down on its side. Here. And here's where the magic happens. Just be very, very gentle. Oh. And there's the shift fork getting stuck. Should have taken that out. But there we go. Bad angle now. Sorry. There we go. She comes right apart. Now that that seal's been broken, comes right apart. And there it is. A little dirty, a little worn. Somebody's been grinding gears. But this is the inside of pretty much every Subaru 5-speed. This is what you're going to get. And since you kept those two bolts in the retainer here, you don't want to turn it completely over because this upper shaft will fall out. But here you go. This is basically, and now you can see the clutch fork that I failed to take out. But now I can remove it. I could have done it before too. It makes it a little bit easier. But this is it. This is how it's laid out. Now you can do whatever you've got to do. Clean it, service it, whatever you want to fix. But don't be scared to do it. It's really not that hard. And once in here, this is the 444 setup. We're going to change the case. I have another case with the different style clutch setup, and we're just going to lay this all in there. That'll be the next video. So stay tuned. We'll complete the Subaru trainee soon.